Now, last season, there were plenty of surprises across Europe. This season, they've not really been as prevalent, I would say. I would say football has sort of reverted back to the status quo, whereas last season you had the surprise of Leverkusen winning the league, Bologna doing well, Girona doing well. Again, this season it feels like the teams that are in the positions are the teams that should be there. With the exception of the Prem, which has gone a little bit mad for various reasons, and one team that has stepped up to shock Europe and shock England, Nottingham Forest. Now, maybe not quite the fairy tale story of the others, as, look, Nottingham Forest have signed roughly 1,000 players since getting promoted back into the Premier League. They've broken rules on spending. So this isn't a team that have recruited, you would say, smartly, and they've got a team of real unknowns. They've got really good players, but even still to find themselves third position in the table and have been there for quite a sustained period is really impressive. Down to the level of players they've brought in, down to the tactical work of Nuno Espirito Santo, down to the fact that they are taking football back 20 years, and that might sound like a diss, but it's a compliment. They are taking 20-year-old tactics and using it in the modern age to great effect, and teams aren't adapting to it well. Now, normally I'll go on about the attacking stage of a team first of all, because that's the most exciting, but with Nottingham Forest and the way they do things, it's only fair that I go over the defensive phase first, because that's where this tactic in this team really shines. Now, they do press on occasion, whether that's they've gone a goal or two behind, or there's something that Nuno has noticed within the team. But they're not a high-pressing team by any stretch. As soon as the opposition regain the ball, they will drop into their own half, they will sit deep, and they will soak up pressure and restrict space, and I'll put that together now. Now, just illustrating what I was speaking about before, it's low, it's deep, it's compact, very little space to play through. 4-2-3-1, 4-4-1-1, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it. And we'll start from the top and work our way back, because there's many aspects to what makes this defensive shape so good. It's not just, players sitting deep, it's not just restricting space for the opposition to play through. There is a little bit of, I don't know how to say it, there's a little bit of genius within the detail. Chris Wood, and this is, I think, one of my more intriguing parts of this tactic, sits in between the two centre-backs. Typically, you'll have the striker sitting a little bit deeper, managing the pass maybe into the attacking unit, or he'll go to press one and then shadow the pass back into the other, whereas Chris Wood immediately starts in between the two. And that is to prevent the easy pass between the two centre-backs. And you might think that's a bit silly because it almost forces him to bring the ball forward and play it further up the pitch. The problem is, with this Forest shape and how deep they sit and how much they soak up space, you're essentially playing it into traffic. You're walking into traffic, and there's very little you can hit. And as a result, it maybe forces you to play a bit of a hopeful ball to try and force the opening against this Forest shape, which causes it to be overturned a lot, and Forest can intercept. And they also rank pretty highly for interceptions in the Premier League. And there can be pressure applied, so let's just say if the 5 moves forward with the ball, then Gibbs White, if the pivot he's marking drops in a little bit deeper and the centre-back starts to move past the pivot, he can then move across, shadowing his original marker, to get close to the player on the ball. Again, putting him under pressure to play that errant ball that can be intercepted, or just to lose the ball to Gibbs White, and then launch the counter-attack through Hudson-Odoi, Alanga and Chris Wood. So, it obviously forces the attack forward, but it forces the opposition into a position that they're almost not ready for. They're not playing their game. They're being forced to play it Forest's way. And as just spoken about, Gibbs White will mark the pivot in the centre of the pitch. This can create a little bit of an issue because teams can play with a double pivot, even in the more attacking stages, whether that's a 3-2, a 2-3 at least, or maybe even 3 in the midfield if one of the attacking midfielders drops in. And the way they counteract that is Chris Wood can drop in, making it a 4-2-4. Again, just restricting the space and allowing the centre-backs to stay on the ball, but with very little to aim for. Sometimes it can be a full-back inverting, and then the winger on the side of the full-back will come in a little bit more narrow to mark him, to watch him, to make sure he doesn't get the time and space on the ball. The obviously back three was spread a little bit wider, Alanga coming up, and Chris Wood still doing the shadowing role between the two centre-backs and preventing the easy pass. And if anything, if it's the number 5 out wide, as you can see here, he's forced into a more basic pass and a more predictable pass from Forest's perspective if they do that. So there's ways they counter it, there's ways they adapt to it, and they are really good at it. And the wingers for Nottingham Forest, which are usually Hudson-Odoi and Alanga, do pay special attention to the fullbacks. Don't want them getting on the ball, don't want them overloading attacking areas and finding space that they can maybe find in those more forward areas. So they'll stay up high with them alongside Gibbs-White, or if they move forward, let's just say if the 7 and the 11 move inside, and the opposition are a team that get their source of width from the fullbacks, then Elanga and Hudson-Odoi will have to stay concentrated, stay alert to the overlapping run, and drop in and make that Forest defensive line a back 6 if they absolutely need to just prevent that wide area from being exposed, because they can sometimes get caught out if the wingers aren't doing their job defensively enough. Maybe the wingers pulled out quite wide and the Forest fullbacks don't want to overcommit coming too close and leaving more space in the box that needs to be exposed. But if Elanga and Hudson-Odoi do their job well enough, they're fine. And it leaves the back four to just focus solely on defending the box, which is what they're good at. Elliot Anderson and Ryan Yates are typically the two holding midfielders, and they will mark the attacking midfielders of the opposition, which typically every team plays with at least. You sometimes get teams that play with 3. And again, Forest have to adapt accordingly to that. But Anderson and Yates will mark the two attacking midfielders. Won't allow themselves to become too stretched if they come wider to receive the ball, maybe from the deeper areas, from, let's say, the number 6. So they'll leave themselves a little bit off, but they'll stay mindful of the pass, and they'll have to read it if that pass comes in to get across and pressure and close them. They don't want to be too stretched too quickly and create too much space in the middle of the pitch. How they can get outnumbered in this area is, again, just through the extra man, and that's been an issue from this season, is when that centre area gets overloaded and the opposition finds space for a pass or a shot on the edge of the box. So let's just say if Anderson's getting dragged in by the number 8, maybe the number 7 inverts as Hudson-Odoi moves out wide, and Williams doesn't react to him, then you get Anderson and Yates having to balance between 3 players, and obviously that's a bit of a tough thing to do. Pass goes into the 10, Yates reacts, 8 finds it here, can slip through the striker, can slip through another runner, or he can get a shot away from the edge of the box. Again, caused issues. But normally, Forest have to react to that, and that is, again, dependent on the player that moves into that position. If it's the winger coming in, Nico Williams, or if it's on the other side, Ola Aina has to be ready to adapt and close that space and get a bit closer to him to equalise the numbers there. If it's maybe a fullback that's inverting into the higher stage, like a Josko Gvardiol, then Hudson-Odoi or Elanga have to be ready to move inside and make it a midfield 3 in those deeper areas and stay closer to Anderson and Yates to cover that movement of the fullback. Or if it's maybe the extra midfielder that's coming in from deeper areas, then Gibbs-White can drop in, allowing Yates and Anderson to spread, and he can then fill that space to stop the number 4 from finding that room to manoeuvre in the middle of the pitch. And typically when you're a defensive team against a team that's sustaining possession of the ball, they will push really high. Centre-backs will find themselves very high into the opposing half. And so you have to be ready for that overload, and Forest do drop into their shape really well. Also, that overload can come from a striker. If he drops into this area, this can catch Forest out. Playing that pass in between the 2 midfielders, maybe Gibbs-White's found himself a bit higher up the pitch. Where they have an equaliser is Murillo is brilliant at engaging from the defensive line to win the ball back and start a counter-attack for Nottingham Forest, whether that's through tackling one of the surrounding players, picks up the loose ball to drive forward with it, or he gets possession of the ball and uses his fantastic passing range to find the likes of Hudson-Odoi or to Anthony Elanga in those wide channels. And again, his reading of situations is fantastic, aggressive, jumps into challenges really well. And uses his slightly smaller but stockier frame to his advantage really well. Defends the ball going outside of him, so let's just say if Williams gets maybe pulled into this area and a player makes a run into that channel, he defends these areas of the pitch excellently, defends flat crosses into the box. He's, without being disrespectful to Forest, is a fantastic player that I think will be playing for a Champions League club soon enough. I know Nottingham Forest could qualify for the Champions League, a top Champions League club, and I'm not trying to sound disrespectful, I just think he's that good. Milinkovic as well, Bayern, I don't want to leave him out because he's been, you could argue, one of the signings of the season, if not the signing of the season. The aerial threat of the centre-backs was a bit of an issue for Nottingham Forest last season. They were a really poor set-piece team. Didn't deal with long balls into the box well enough at all. Him coming in as solved that. He's a fantastic box defender, aerially dominant. It's gone from a weakness to a strength with him in, and sometimes you will look to see him slow the game down, use the dark arts of football to win free kicks, to slow an opponent's attack down, and again, use a strength to their advantage. No one more guilty of this, by the way, than Ryan Yates, who does absolutely love a foul. I think he's the Forest player with the most fouls this season, and he spends a lot of his time on the floor just getting in those slide tackles. It's to good advantage. I know this might sound like an insult, and I feel like this is a dirty thing to accuse someone of. It works. Who cares if it makes footballing purists angry? If you've got that in your locker and you've got that within your team to use to your advantage, use it. So Forest dropping in forces teams into playing a slow possession game a lot easier. That's what Forest want. They want you to have 70% of the ball. They want you to exhaust yourself passing around, trying to find angles, maybe playing riskier passes because you've got the frustration of not being able to find an angle quick enough. And then when they win the ball back, they have 4 fantastic profiles in terms of counter-attacking quality to use for a team. They've got the creative attacking playmaker in Gibbs White that's got a fantastic range to his passing and has got the vision to match it. The pacey wide players in Hudson-Odoi and Elanga to go from back to front quickly and find space in behind opposition fullbacks on the transition. Just great breakaway counter-attacking pace to hurt any team. And the prototypical number 9 target man striker, fantastic at holding the ball up, using his aerial and physical threat to win duels, whether that's on the ground or in the air, and find the likes of Gibbs White and Elanga and Hudson-Odoi, scoring at an abnormal rate in terms of his conversion. Is it sustainable? Maybe not, but it maybe shows that there's a bit of a method to creating clearer chances as opposed to creating many chances. Chris Wood has benefited from this entire system more than anyone. He's been excellent. And I'll go over the attacking stage, but to be honest with you, how they counter-attack and how they attack generally is one and the same for Nottingham Forest, but I'll just try and simplify it as best I can. Still the same idea for Nottingham Forest, direct up to Chris Wood, for him to knock the ball down to the fellow players in pursuit of the second balls, get it out wide, get into crossing opportunities for Hudson-Odoi and Elanga. And one thing I neglected to speak about when speaking about the counter-attacking situations for Forest is that Hudson-Odoi and Elanga, while being exceptionally quick and able to get onto the end of passes from the likes of Gibbs White, and also Gibbs White having the composure on the ball to hold onto it long enough to be able to find his timing right to get the ball into Hudson-Odoi and Elanga that can really break a defensive line. They're also exceptional ball carriers, so if the ball comes into this area and they've got a bit of space, they can drive forward with the ball and into space to allow Chris Wood to get himself into the best position possible in the box to produce the best goal-scoring opportunity. The profiles of the players in these positions are simplistic, but sometimes we try and overcomplicate football. Sometimes it is just about quick wingers, strong striker, creative playmaker. So he'll look to receive second ball opportunities, and Forest will typically squeeze over onto the left-hand side. When goal kicks happen, they will look for this in many ways. Anderson can come up a little bit further alongside Gibbs White. Maybe Yates plays a bit more of a deeper role. He has the qualities to create in these situations as well, Anderson. Not to the level of Gibbs White, but he's still very effective. Also, Anthony Elanga can come into these areas off of Chris Wood almost to receive second ball opportunities. And again, just make it a lot harder for the opposition to deal with the central overload in these areas. And Elanga has shown really good creative qualities from the centre areas of the pitch, from knockdowns from the likes of Wood, or maybe the ball's been slipped through to him from deeper areas from Gibbs White or Anderson. And he's played the first time or two-touch through ball into Chris Wood, and he's been fantastic. Elanga is having a really good season. It also gives the invitation for Ola Aina to overlap on this right-hand side. He won't look to go to the byline, but he will look to just create a bit of width on that right-hand side to get maybe a cross in from the half space, or to find Elanga making a diagonal pass just in front of him to get the ball into the box and to create a goal-scoring opportunity while he's got the space to do so. And again, they're similar on the left-hand side as well, as Hudson-Odoi gets the ball, but Hudson-Odoi isn't just a byline winger. He likes to cut inside in these areas and create, whether that's, again, slipping a ball through to Chris Wood or Anthony Elanga, or getting a shot away from the edge of the box, which he's definitely got in his locker. This then gives the invitation for Nico Williams or Alex Moreno to overlap from the left-hand side, if for no other reason than just to make sure that there is someone holding width on the left-hand side while they're prioritising that side of the pitch. They will never overlap at the same time, Williams and Aina. One of them will stay back while the other moves forward, just to make sure they're protected against the counter-attack, with Ryan Yates playing a shielding role in front of them. It's not just your qualities in the counter-attack, it's how you defend against an opponent's counter-attack that's equally as important. Milenkovic then being left generally as the central centre-back, because you'll find Williams a lot more forward than you will Aina, where Aina won't overlap to the byline, Nico Williams will. Murillo can then defend the wide areas, which I've spoken about before, is something he's fantastic at. And the profiles within this Forest team, they've just hit it perfectly enough to get the best out of the system they're trying to play. And to be fair, in Morgan Gibbs White, they have a fantastic playmaker that maybe doesn't get the credit he deserves because of the team he plays for. It's not a free-flowing possession team. So when you see the goals there, You know, they're counter-attacking goals, which there's nothing wrong about that, but they maybe don't have the goal catalogue and the highlight reel that show how good Morgan Gibbs-White is. And while there is a lot of structure to the players within this team and the positions they take up, Gibbs-White feels like he's the only player in this that's a little bit free of that, and will look to come deep to receive the ball from Milinkovic. Maybe Aina's moved forward and he'll fill that position at right back to start playing the ball forward. And his range is more on show the deeper he drops, that he doesn't just have it in between defence and midfield where he can slip passes through to the forward players. He also has it where he can spread the play wide, you know, find those diagonal passes out to the opposite fullback, which can then result in a goal-scoring opportunity from that initial movement and that initial pass to completely take away an opponent's shape. He is a brilliantly underrated player. I think a player that England should look to utilise more. And again, where I was talking about Murillo before, this is a player that I think could be playing at one of the true elites in football. Again, not to disrespect Nottingham Forest, I don't feel like it's probably fair to talk about other teams. And him offering that quality, we saw it actually when they played a back three. I didn't think the back three suited Nottingham Forest as much, but it got Morgan Gibbs-White on the ball more, and we were able to see a lot more quality from him as a result. But did it suit the overall philosophy of the team? Maybe not, but it made it a lot more digestible, I think, to watch from a neutral's perspective. But either way, they sit in third place. A little bit of a bump in the road in the last few games, but like if you're a Forest fan, did you think you weren't going to have a poor run of form? Realistically, you were always going to. It's whether it's sustained or you can move past it and get back into the form you were displaying earlier on. FA Cup run as well, playing that game today, which kind of dates the video, and a great chance to get into the quarterfinals, and who knows, a cheeky little cup run. There's something winnable about the FA Cup this year. Why not? But I'd love to know what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments below. I'll see you next time. In a bit, lads.